Hey, geeks and geekettes out there in comic book land. This is Chuck Dixon back for another session of Ask Chuck Dixon, our 28th edition. And I'm here to answer questions about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living primarily is I write comic books. Little bit of housekeeping here. If you like these videos, let YouTube know it. Hit that like button. Doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me out. It helps me reach a larger audience. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of comic book fans out there who might have a question of their own. And you can help them find this channel. Okay, let's start with Captain America. I get a lot of Captain America questions. I've barely ever written a character, but I think people who followed me know that he's one of my favorite characters. Anyway, Vance Capley asks, the original Captain America comics, Bucky pre-Silver Age, lived. He was shot, wounded, and written out of the books to have a female partner for Cap. Never did care for the rewrite of the Golden Age events of Captain America at Marvel in the 60s and 70s. Anyway, enough old man rambling, great video. I don't know what the question is here, to be quite frank. It's more of a statement than a question. But I like Captain America. I mean, he made a big impact on me when he suddenly popped up in the Avengers, totally unannounced, because everything in comics back then was unannounced until you got to the newsstand and saw the next issue. I mean, they didn't even hint that this was coming. Big secret kept by Marvel from comic book readers everywhere. And I liked it all the way. I liked especially this short run in the 70s. Gil Kane and John Romita were on the book, and there were some awesome Shield-based stories with Red Skull and stuff like that. But I've always been disappointed in how they treat 50s Cap. And, 50s Cap went from fighting Nazis to fighting commies. Made a pretty easy transition there. And, battling our former Soviet allies, keeping them out of the United States, crushing their conspiracies to end our democracy, all that kind of thing. And these are also by John Romita, coincidentally. And I kind of like this portrayal. Marvel stopped publishing superheroes for a few years and then brought Cap and Human Torch and Submariner back in some terrific comics for a very short run. Their return to superheroes kind of failed with readers because at the time crime and horror comics and romance comics ruled the day. So Marvel abandoned its superhero plans until Stan resurrected them again in the early 60s. But anyway, in this run, he's Cap. He's fighting commies. But when they brought when they returned in the 70s to this storyline to kind of try to explain why there was a Cap in the 50s, even though the Cap that we knew, the rebooted Cap we knew, was on ice, literally. After escaping the Nazis and Bucky dying and all that stuff. So where did this Captain America and new Bucky suddenly come from? And they wrote a story in which this guy was a mouth breathing, right wing caricature, sort of a stand-in, an allegory for Joe McCarthy and the House on American Activities. And as usual, the stories were written without doing any actual research into the communist scare period, the Red Scare period, and the 1950s Cap is portrayed as a villain. I've always thought that was wrong, and as we know from the Verona papers, it was really wrong because there really were communists here in the United States trying to overthrow our government, seeding sedition, Hollywood types and people in academia and even people in our government who held actual military rank in the NKVD in the Soviet Union. They weren't just sympathizers or informers. They were actual spies in the pay of the Kremlin. And all that really happened. So 50s Cap was right, as we know now from papers handed over after the fall of the USSR. In the interest of transparency. The United States government was allowed access, and the United States media and the whole world media was allowed access to KGB and NKVD papers, proving that many of the things that uh, people were told were just crazy conspiracy, looking for communists under the rug kind of things, actually were true. Graham Nolan and I, in the wake of the Verona Papers, proposed doing a miniseries that would explore this period of the, Cap 2.0 in the 50s and basically redeem his character from the 70s portrayal. And I think you can guess how far that pitch went. Okay, next question. Barry Mitchell. If you wouldn't have come up with the name Bane, what else would you have called that character? I have no idea. As I said before, his Bane's working name before we knew anything about him, or before we knew much about him, was Doc Toxic. And that's the name that would show up on the whiteboards and in our outline notes as we were getting into Nightfall. I don't know what I would have called him. At the time, it was really popular to combine names. You had, you know, Death Wolf and things like that. They would just take two words and slam them together until I think Rob Liefeld used all of those combinations, and there weren't any left. And I was determined not to name him that kind of image character kind of name. So I went to the thesaurus and looked up evil, and there were a whole bunch of words synonymous with evil, and I picked out Bane, which, as I've told you before in previous videos, the editors hated that name and told me they would come up with something better. Well, they never did, and within 3 days, everybody was just calling it Bane. So, yeah, I don't know. I really didn't have any second choices. I landed on Bane and said, that's the one. And lucky me, I didn't come up with some dumbass name that everybody would forget. Brian White asks, did you get my question about actors and Levon Cade? I may have, but I've got it now. I posted as a comment on the link to one of your last videos. Yeah, I checked there, and I think that might be where I found this one. So, or no, this looks like it's from Facebook. Anyway, Levon Cade, in case you don't know, is a series of, crime vigilante justice novels that I write. I'm currently writing the 8th one, Levon's Hunt. These are available on Kindle. They'll be, and some of the later books are still available in paperback. They'll all be reissued in paperback very soon with new covers. But Levon is a former, he's a former Marine. There's no such thing as an ex-Marine, and he's back home in Alabama in the series now, and he still can't stay out of trouble's way. He just steps in front of the fan right after the crap hits it. And yeah, it's currently optioned by Balboa Productions, and I have read the scripts for the first few episodes. It's proposed as a television series. I have read the scripts for the first few episodes as written by Sylvester Stallone. And I don't usually play the casting game, but it's kind of hard when you're creating a character from the ground up not to kind of look around and think who might play Levon Cade. And my choice from the beginning has always been Lucas Black. You may know him from Fast and Furious 3. He's on one of the NCIS television shows. He made a big impression when he was young in a film called All the Pretty Horses. And he's got this kind of Steve McQueen physicality. He's a guy who looks like he's capable in any situation of handling anything. He looks at home, behind any car, with any gun, with any motorcycle, things like that. The kind of Steve McQueen vibe of a guy who knows what he's doing. The other plus is he's got the accent. He's got that Alabama Southern drawl. That's his natural speaking voice, and I think he'd be awesome. He's the perfect age to play Levon Cade. He's in his mid to late 30s, and right in the zone. The only other character I've really ever thought about who I would cast is Levon's Uncle Fern, who shows up late in the books. And Nick Nolte would be awesome. Uncle Fern is a Vietnam vet, lives in his little like farmette uh, deep in an Alabama holler, and he's got his own way of looking at things. And he's retired, also a former U.S. Marine. And I thought, who better than Nick Nolte? So there you go, little casting game for you. Uh, those familiar with the series now, I have no idea who would play Mary, because I don't know when the series is going to start filming, and we need a we need a girl at just the right age to play Levon Cade's daughter, Mary. Okay, Aaron Finkelstein, when are you coming back to Yancey Street Comics? Yancey Street Comics is not on Yancey Street. It's down here in Florida, in Port Richey, and it's an awesome comic shop. It's a huge comic shop. Here, let me show you a picture of it. It's a big old store and a mall, and it's one of those dying malls, and it's weird because this comic shop is the anchor store. I mean, they got a Best Buy and a J.C. Penney's and a Dillard's, but this is the store that brings people to the mall, and they got everything. If they don't got it, then it's in the back room. They'll find it for you. Okay, so if you're ever in Port Richey, Florida, over here on the Gulf side, and you want to head down or up 19 US 19, there it is at the Gulf View Mall. There's a little commercial for you guys. You're welcome, Steve. Uh, Ian Miller. I was wondering, how do you think storytellers should approach writing a story where the outcome is predetermined, whether it's for a franchise like Batman or Superman, where in the end they have to win, or as a prequel, where you know where the characters have to end up? Well, in comics, we call it the illusion of change. And you have to invest the reader in a story that they pretty much know the ending. They know how it's going to end. The good guy's going to win. Evil will not triumph. And if evil does triumph, it's temporarily. Um, so, because that's not just the ending we anticipate, it's the ending we want, as decent, normal, moral beings, we want good to triumph in the end, unless you're a sicko. And there's movies for that, if that's the kind of thing you like. But the hard part, of course, for a writer is to create suspense in a story in which you pretty much in your bones already know the outcome. But that's the challenge you face in any story where the outcome is determined, where you know where it's going to end even before the story starts. But you've got to force the audience to suspend their disbelief and forget what they know about where the story's going and get involved in the day-to-day of the characters. And that's pretty much what superhero comics do. Um, you know, that's their job, is to interest you in characters that you pretty much know where the story's going and how it's going to end. It's and for a writer, that means that you have a number of routes you can take. You can come up with a new twist on an old character, introduce a new villain. One of my favorites, introduce an ancillary character we've never seen before, and sort of tell the story of your lead characters through their eyes. And that leads to some suspense because the ancillary character is like, the special guest star on Combat, or the uncredited actor on Star Trek. They're doomed. They might die. Whereas Batman and Robin are obviously not going to die, but some person they meet on the street, or some victim of a crime, or a witness, that kind of thing, or a cop we've never seen before, something bad may happen to them, so you can generate suspense that way. And but some stories, we kind of want to see. We kind of want to see the same story over and over again. It's comfort food. It's mashed potatoes and gravy. It's warmed over pizza for breakfast. It's kind of the it's kind of expected, and we kind of enjoy it. We don't want to admit that. We think we want surprise and everything else. But of course, the challenge to the writer is to present that kind of story, that kind of comfort food story, in a way that the reader doesn't quite expect. And of course, come up with interesting events, interesting action set pieces and character turns and all to keep it all interesting. Um, Obviously, you know, to make it interesting, you have to make it interesting. The Department of Redundancy department here. But, some stories, we see the end coming at the beginning and we welcome it. We like that. It's that familiarity. It's why stories, you know, uh, the same stories get told all the time in myth and legend and folklore, uh, because we we know what's coming, and we know that um, we're going to enjoy it. Especially if it's presented in a new, different, or surprising way, which you can do with anticipated endings. But yeah, don't you like to see, you know, you're waiting for that scene where Columbo's almost going to leave and turns around with that one more question. That's what you watch the show for. You don't watch it to see Robert Culp or Richard Basehart kill their wives. You watch it to see Columbo catch them, and you want him to catch them because you're a decent person, who wants that narrative ended with justice supreme. Okay, so there you go. The illusion of change. Luke Johnson. Marvel recently reprinted a bunch of Marvel Knights books, including your Marvel Knights team book. I wanted to ask if you could give some further insights beyond the bonus material in the book, such as the choice of members, how the book came to be, and any reflections on how you might have done it differently. Well, for me, um, I'd never written a real mainstream Marvel book. I mean, the closest I ever got was Moon Knight, and Moon Knight's kind of off in his own corner of the Marvel universe. I think he was an Avenger for a little while. I don't remember, but he was never, mixing it up with the big guns of the Marvel universe. And I'd always wanted to write a book like that. And I got approached by Jimmy Palmiotti and Joe Quesada because they were running the Marvel Knights imprint at Marvel. And they wanted me to do this Marvel Knights book. Now, initially, they approached me when I was still under exclusive contract at DC. And I said, well, my contract's not up till November. I'd be interested in doing the book, but I can't start it till then. And Joe Quesada tried to urge me to break my contract, which I was not about to do. DC was very good to me, and I wasn't about to betray them. He even suggested I start writing the book in secret, which, that's breaking a contract, Joe. That's the same thing. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But November rolled around, the contract ended, and I started turning out scripts for Marvel Knights. Now, initially, I think what Joe and Jimmy wanted was a street level, tough, gritty book. And I didn't want to do that at all because we already had Punisher doing that in his own regular title. I didn't think we needed any more of those kind of stories. So I took this as my possibly one and only, and as it turned out, it was my one and only opportunity to explore the Marvel universe, especially based on street level characters, and and include every character that I always wanted to write in the book, which I pretty much got to do. I got to include Shang-Chi and Black Widow, and I got to write a lot of cool Daredevil, Punisher, verbal sparring scenes. Um, I believe, yeah, I did have Moon Knight in it briefly. Doctor Strange, character I'd always wanted to write. And my main goal in doing the book, my main idea, the thing I always wanted to do was I wanted to write a scene where Ulick the Troll uh, and the Punisher fought, and I don't know why. I could never explain why I wanted to do this, but I did. I was dying to write a scene where the Punisher had to go up against Ulick and use every weapon on him to try to defeat Ulick the Troll. And I proposed this a number of times to Don Daly. And even Don Daly, even Don Daly, as adventurous and fearless and reckless as he was, would not okay me to do a story with the Punisher versus an Asgardian troll. Uh, so I go into the book with, no real directions from Jimmy and Joe, and I'm completely left to my own devices. So of course, I write a story that begins setting up a confrontation between Frank Castle and Ulick. And, and I handed in the first issue script, and Jimmy called me and said, "What's with the troll? You know, what's going on here?" And I said, "I always wanted to write this scene. You know, it's going to pay off. It's going to be really cool." And he's like, "Okay, okay, but you know, this isn't what we were looking for. You know, we were looking for real street level crime. You know, mafioso, Dirty Harry type stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not really interested in writing that. I've done that on the Punisher, and I've been there. I wanted to write something else. I wanted to write an ensemble, Marvel ensemble book." And so he said, "Okay, okay, yeah, but lay off the trolls. You know, try to de-emphasize that element of the story." So of course I handed in the second issue script, and the title of that script was "Trolls" with an exclamation point. And immediately got a call from Jimmy. "Yo, now you're effing with me," which I thought was funny. But I got my fight scene in, and I got to do some cool stuff. Cloak and Dagger, Luke Cage. I mean, I just piled the book up with all of these characters, brought back some villains, and the book ended when they changed editors on me, and the new editor decided that he was going to take the book in a different direction with a new creative team. And I guess the direction was nowhere, because my last issue was the last issue of the book. There were no more issues. Whatever creative team he was bringing on board must never have handed anything in. And the book ended with my last issue. My only regret was, well, I would have loved to have written this book for years. That's one regret. But my biggest regret is that my next issue, I'd wrapped up a lot of story arcs, and my next issue was going to be kind of a what if Elseworlds kind of story with the Marvel Knights cast in a Western. Because my artist was Eduardo Barreto, and Ed drew fantastic Westerns, and I wanted to do them in a Western. And then, you know, this had precedent. I'd done Justice Riders. Um, there's a famous issue of Daredevil drawn by John Buscema that was done as a Western, and I just wanted to do it. And in that story, if you're interested, because I did write the script, it's the Marvel Knights versus Doctor Doom, and Doctor Doom is of Spanish descent in my version, and he has this huge ranchero down in Mexico, from where he's trying to take over the United States. And the story ends with his biggest fear. He pretty much defeats the Marvel Knights and escapes, but then he encounters the characters that he fears the most, El Cuatro Fantastico. It's the Fantastic Four as gunfighters, and that's where the story ends. So there you go, the never to be published final issue of Marvel Knights. Hey, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, whichever you did. And if you want to support good comics, you want to support my comics, if you think my comics are good, you can go to Patreon, look up Arkhaven Comics, give $1, $3, $5. You get goodies in return, and it helps pay the artists who are working on a number of new projects that I'm doing for Arkhaven that will appear in paper, digital, and mobile phone app comics. So all of that is upcoming, and I'd appreciate any help. And it really does help. It helps me find top talent and pay them what they deserve. So thanks so much, and I'll see everybody down the road.